Okay, so jurors, at this point, we will start with closing arguments, and counsel for Ms. Medina will go first.
Thank you, Your Honor. It's 2026, and we're still talking about whether or not domestic violence happens. It is hard to believe in 2026 we're still debating what a battered woman is. That someone has to see the abuser physically punch the victim. In 2026, the Commonwealth is placing Lucy Medina before you, suggesting that a person who has been battered for 28 years, who finally says, no, stop, you can't keep hitting me. In 2026, a woman who tries to protect herself faces criminal charges. And there's questions asked of witnesses. Did you actually see him punch her? No. I saw the bruises and the marks and the scratches and the flowers. Not once, not twice, not 1 year, for years. And we're debating if somebody's a battered woman. You heard from Dr. Zeisel, a fantastic, experienced, thoughtful, kind, 38 years of experience, and he came and took the stand, and he told you about some of what you might have known, some what you might not have known about a woman who has been battered. And he was asked, why didn't you meet with Ms. Medina? You should have met with Ms. Medina. She wasn't evasive. She was afraid. She was battered. She was humiliated. And he had an opinion with no doubt that woman is a battered woman on his education, his experience, his diagnosis. And you know what? He did meet her in this courtroom like you did. And he watched her for hours as he testified. And when he watched her, it did not undermine his conclusion one speck. What he saw solidified what he already knew. And as wonderful as Dr. Zeisel is, we don't need an expert of 38 years experience. The best seats are the seats right here. The seats you had chosen to sit in, just feet. And you could see. And you could hear. And you could feel. If there's any dispute, it is over. This is a battered woman. And she had a right. She had a right to say no. She had a right to defend herself. She had a right. This woman is in the wrong seat. She shouldn't be sitting here. She should be sitting there. A witness, a victim. Where's the victim witness advocates? Where's the support for the 28 years of abuse? She's sitting here because the government put her here and put a label on her. She's a defendant, and they did it like that. Did they investigate? Did they show due diligence? Did they care? Their decision was over before it started. Did they actually sit back and try to think, what actually happened and why did it happen? I mentioned that to you in the opening. They're going to come in and tell you what they saw after. What actually happened and why did it happen? They didn't do much. They went to the scene, they take pictures. Now, the medical personnel spoke to Luis Medina. He could speak clearly. You're going to see the records. And he said, I cut myself. I cut myself. Did he? Is he lying to cover for her? Is he telling the truth? Nobody would know, because when the police and the government received information, they did nothing. They went to the hospital. He was intubated. He couldn't talk. They didn't go back. It was COVID. We already charged Lucy. Don't go back. Don't try. What do you mean by you stabbed yourself? How did you stab yourself? Did you take the knife from her? Did you grab her arm? Did you struggle? Did you knock over furniture? Nobody cared. Nobody cared. because she was already in that seat. And she was going to stay there as she is today before you. And that was it. There was an officer at the scene, didn't have a great memory. Basically, she said something about stabbing, basically. But then when I questioned him, basically, you don't speak Spanish. You heard her on the 911 tape moments before we see her in this catatonic, terrified, turbulent state. And he admits, I don't know what she really said. I don't know verbatim. I get the gist of it. The gist of it. This woman who speaks Spanish, distraught, through this terror, I got the gist of it, and that was it? Okay. Don't follow up. Don't look for facts. Don't look for details. And at the scene, they tell you that they talked to neighbors. You didn't hear from one neighbor that they went to a door. You heard from Miss Sanchez. But later, from another officer, you heard Miss Sanchez came to them. They didn't go knock on doors. She came to them. What other neighbor did they speak to? What other tenant did they speak to? Nothing. They didn't care. So they bring Miss Medina to the station. And when they bring her to the station, understand she has been beaten, battered, again. She has bruises covering her body. She is in pain. She's afraid. Speaks Spanish as a primary language. In that interview, I'm not going to be as kind as Dr. Zeisel. Was it misogynistic? Is that too much of a word for me to use, is it? You have a woman who helps her take off her clothes. She's in basically a piece of paper. She's distraught. She's emotional. You see her staring, unattached, detached. Why isn't a woman in the room? You have two men, and they were soft-spoken. They weren't nice. All she cared about was her husband, her king. Not herself, her king. Is he okay? Oh, maybe. There's no empathy. There's no understanding. There's no search for what actually happened. On that tape, the investigator uses the word stabbed 8 times, trying to force those words in her mouth. And she knows force, emotionally and physically. And she keeps on saying, I don't know. Where did you stab him? I don't know. Where was he? I don't know. You never heard her say on that tape, I stabbed him. You don't hear that. It's their words, and she says she does not know. And if you think for a second she's not being honest, watch her emotion. Think of what Dr. Zeisel said. She could have defended herself and talked about how she incurred all of these wounds and blamed Luis Medina. She didn't. A dissociative state, a catatonic state. And so what the government has for evidence comes from that interview. And think about her demeanor and interaction, that stare, that distance. And think about the attitude of the investigators. You have to listen. But one of them calls her Hun. Hun. Here's another thing you might notice in the tape. When they ask her what was happening, and she says, he beats me. The detective goes, oh, he cheated on you. Scorned woman, of course, that's the case. He cheated on you. No, he beats me. That is their first instinct and impression and bias as they're speaking to her. Love or scorn has nothing to do with it. That's how they treat her. That's how they think. Watch when she's giving Miranda. Do you understand these complicated rights? She's staring at the table. Her head, you don't know which way it's shaking. Oh, you agreed to that one. You agreed to that one. So the government is going to take 2 fragmented sentences and try to build a case beyond a reasonable doubt. They're not even close. They're going to say to you that when she came outside with a knife, she walked up and stabbed him. Now, if she did, if that was the truth, and it's not, she would have had every right to do that because she had a right to defend herself. But that is not the facts, not even close. I warned you in the opening. You weren't going to hear any evidence that she walked up and she stabbed him. She came outside with the knife and said, you have to stop hitting me. Please stop hitting me. They have no idea, no evidence. They should not even argue an inference about what happens after that. Because all we know is she says, you need to stop hitting me. and at some point she calls 911 and there's a wound. How does it happen? We can speculate, but we're not supposed to. The audacity of her to challenge him. Did he attack her? Was she trying to fend him off? Did he grab the knife and hit himself? Did she fall on the ground and hold it up? You don't know because the government didn't do their homework. You don't hear from an expert on wounds. You don't hear anything about the angle and the position that she was in. You don't hear whether or not he could have pushed the knife in fighting for it. You don't know anything because they didn't do anything. And they're going to ask you with absolutely no evidence to take her from when she was saying, "You can't hit me anymore holding a knife," to somehow her stabbing him. That sequence is absent. But what we do know is there is a struggle. There was a struggle. Now remember, she told the police she got punched twice, it's all she remembered. Cut on her lip. Cut on her lip, and then another punch. The struggle must have been before he was impaled. It must have been. Because if there was 2 punches, her injuries are far more than 2 strikes. We know there was a struggle in that backyard. Tipped over hibachi, flowers strewn, furniture turned over. She said she threw a candle at him at first. That wasn't enough to stop him. The candle was not enough to stop him. We know there is a struggle. And then we know there is a number of wounds. A number. Her lip, her hands. They don't have anybody come in to explain defensive wounds. Her chest, her neck, her face, her back. Her elbows, scrapes, dragged, her knees. This was a struggle, and they can't tell you who started the physical struggle, who grabbed who touched who first, who escalated. They cannot tell you. They ask you just to jump and fill in the blanks. You cannot do that with evidence. You cannot guess or have an inference. You need fact, and they don't have it. And that is the heart of their case, asking you to speculate. Asking you to speculate. Ignore what Luis Medina said to the paramedic, to the trauma doctor. "I did it myself." Ignore it. Throw it out. They're asking you to do that. And so when you think about who started this physical altercation, there's a word in law, first aggressor. You can consider evidence about who was the first aggressor. Do you think it was Luis Medina who started the physical altercation? Or do you think it was Lucy Medina? Because if it was Luis Medina, the government can't disprove self-defense. They can't. They won't because it didn't, but they can't. So think about first aggressor. A lifetime of subservience, a lifetime of kindness, a once very happy, thoughtful, kind woman who never lifted a finger to her king in 28 years. You think she was the first aggressor? And then contrast that with Luis Medina. Before he even met her, Commonwealth and Defense, they agree. Prior to meeting Lucy Medina, in 1998, Luis Medina was dating a different woman and had a child with that woman. During Mr. Medina's relationship with this prior woman, Mr. Medina beat and battered her. They agreed. And then how long did it take when he met Miss Medina? 5 months, dragging her into her mother's home in a back room and beating her so bad, the welts in her face, she's so embarrassed, confused, she doesn't leave the room for days. Who's the first aggressor? I can't go through the litany of 28 years, nor do we want to have to suffer through that. But there's no boundaries for this first aggressor. She's pregnant with their child, and he's pushing her down in a tub. The indignity of taking her out like a piece of trash. Is there any doubt who the first aggressor was that night? When we think about first aggressor, we also can consider what her friends and co-workers saw. I don't want to detail it, we heard it plenty. It's gut-wrenching. The bruises, the flowers, the weeks off of work. And if it wasn't enough, well, that information was provided to the government back in 2000. They didn't bring one witness in to testify. They didn't make one phone call to try to find out why this happened. They did not even bring the witnesses in for your consideration. We have no burden of proof. That's the law. You heard from the court. We have no burden of proof. But we kind of do. Because they weren't going to do it. See, they're putting on a case. It's a search for the truth, all the evidence. They're putting on a case. If we didn't bring these witnesses to you, you would never know. You would never know. We tried. We alerted them. We asked them. They ignored it. They ignored it. And so you heard from Ruth. You heard from Kirsty. You heard what they saw over those years. And that can help you when you consider who initiated the physical combat, who was the first aggressor. And if that's not enough, remarkably, you heard from Luis Medina's attorney. Attorney Murat Erkan came in on behalf of his client, and they actually waived part of their attorney-client privilege. And Attorney Erkan shared with you, and I have his words verbatim because they are powerful. This is what his client told him to tell us. He frequently and violently abused his wife. He struggled with severe alcohol dependency. He expressed it was important for everybody to know, especially when he was under the influence of alcohol, he frequently brutalized his wife. Those are the words of their so-called victim in this case. And Attorney Erkan came in, and you saw his diligence and his thoughtfulness and his vetting process to make sure there was no undue influence or trying to help, that he believed this to be accurate. And by the way, asked how much he was going to make. Doesn't seem like he's going to charge a dime. Why would he come in for free on behalf of a client and give you that powerful information unless it was dead on accurate? And so the other part of the government's argument, other than trying to get you to do some guesswork about stabbing, which they can't prove, is they're going to say Lucy Medina should have walked away, should have ran away. She didn't use all means to avoid it, because she said in that interview when she's staring off into space, worried about her husband, cold, afraid, she said, I could have walked away. It could have ended. And they're going to take that one statement out of context and say, she doesn't have a right to self-defense. She could have walked away. Where was she going to go? If she could have walked away, wouldn't have she walked away 28 years ago? Before the beatings and the brutalization and the pounding? Where was she going to go? And when you think about whether she could walk away, I asked Dr. Zeidel, under the circumstances, could she walk away? In his opinion, his professional opinion, he said unequivocally no. Now why? Why couldn't she walk away? Well, she's in the middle of a moment of a beatdown. We have no idea the sequence of how it happened. And we also know that when you think about whether she could have walked away, you have to, you're entitled to. You can consider her state of mind. You can consider Lucy, how she was thinking and perceiving things on that awful night. Which means we have to go back, and we don't want to keep going back, but we have to go back. This isn't two men on a street, and they're going to get in a fist fight, and one person pulls out a gun, and they could have walked away. This is her home. This is her life. This is where she's been living and beaten for over 2 decades. You get to consider her state of mind. We have that privilege to consider her state of mind. All of the beatings, all of the emotional abuse, all of the flowers, the honeymoon, the luring, the grooming, in his words. If you leave, I will kill you. And they're going to argue to you that she should have ran and gone somewhere and fled. You are allowed to consider the condition of a person who was a battered woman, and that is Lucy Medina. You're allowed to consider that when you consider whether she reasonably in her mind could have walked away from anything. You can consider her mental health diagnoses that she didn't have before she met Lucy Medina, and that is anxiety disorder, PTSD. You can consider that she was fearing not just that moment, but the past beatings and the future beatings that would have come. You can consider all of that. You can consider in her mind her knowledge of his power and dominance. You can consider in her mind the threats that he would kill her. In her mind, it wasn't a matter of if, it was a matter of when and how bad. And didn't you hear witnesses say as time went on, it got worse and worse? Government might say in the interview, she said it hadn't happened for 3 years. Well, people abuse, protect their abusers. It did happen within 3 years because you heard from the witnesses it happened right before COVID. About 6 months before this incident, last time they saw her, all bruised up. That's why those words in a video like that are dangerous. Because she's always protecting, she's covering, she's hiding, she's trying to protect her king. She couldn't walk away. Emotion, remember the study with the dogs and the zapping, and after they get zapped, they don't move when the door opens. She emotionally couldn't get away. She physically couldn't get away. And the beauty of having a jury is we have collective experiences and we'll have all different experiences. If you've never experienced the catastrophic consequences of domestic violence, and it's never been part of your world, then I am happy for you. But if you've seen it, and you know what it looks like, and you've been part of it, then you know she couldn't walk away. You know. So when you deliberate and you share your common experiences, for those of you who know, if someone doesn't have that experience, take the time to share with them and explain to them why Lucy Medina simply could not escape. Help them understand. At the beginning of this case, we made some promises to you, although we have no burden of proof. We promised to show you that the government could not show you, because they had no evidence, how Mr. Medina created or had a laceration in his throat. We told you that, and it's exactly what we showed. And we told you it is important to understand the why, everything that comes before it. And we brought you witnesses, and an attorney, and an expert. The government didn't bring anything. This case was closed that night. I had to ask how many detectives and officers, who's the lead detective? Finally, Mr. Negosian comes in at the end, says he's the lead detective, knows nothing about the case, didn't do anything because of COVID, and never followed up. And had he known about all this stuff, he would have done something about it. But they didn't tell him. They didn't care. And so we're here now before you, and I said something in the opening statement that I've given a lot of thought to. I said, Luis Medina stole Lucy Medina's dignity. I'd like to reconsider that. He didn't steal her dignity. Despite how she feels, Lucy Medina, she has great dignity. And I know Dr. Zeisel said, hope. She lives day by day without hope. Well, I have hope for Lucy Medina because she is resilient. She is persistent. She is kind. She may not have hope yesterday. She may not have hope today, but she has you. She has each and every one of you. And the government did nothing. But the reason why we have jury trials is we have good people from the community who care, who think, who discuss, and we have great faith you will do that. And so Lucy Medina has her dignity, she has hope, and she has each and every one of you. Thank you.